Wow, man. NFL Combine Week, man. And I am joined here with my great friend as a RotoBaller co-host today, Brandon, my boy. We have finally met on screen as well. This is the first time us working together, but we always was in the DMs chatting it up and relating on a certain player.
Yes, man. It is definitely good to collab with you. We've talked about this for so long, but perfect opportunity presented itself to where we can review this RotoBaller rookie mock draft that we did. Like what you mentioned, we have that cohesion that we've had, that one player that we've talked about in the past, and that is our main man, Puka Nakua, that brought fantasy goodness to all of us in
The
2023.
smile, my smile has not left. Man, I can't believe we're already here for NFL Combine Week, man. Like it's here, man. Like we're hearing the noise, we're hearing the rumbles, and like we did this draft about 2 weeks ago. Like we're kind of looking at where everybody's thought process was. Like it was right next to Senior Bowl, obviously, right?
Yeah, we did this draft. It was pretty much started the Monday, I believe, after Senior Bowl week was concluded down in Mobile, Alabama. So you had a lot of that fresh ideas and thought process with how rookies were going to be ranked and where they should fall in a rookie mock draft. So that's
Yeah.
what we kind of put in place here with this one, and we're going to go over it and talk about a few of the players.
I mean, honestly, if we could start at the 101, and this is with you,
Yes,
like just explain a
weird.
little bit of your thought process of taking probably the best player on the draft board in the process.
Yeah. And it's odd how that worked out as I landed the 1-1 in this
Rigged,
rookie mock
rigged.
draft. Yeah, I absolutely rigged. So it's the no-brainer pick. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is
Yeah,
the consensus 1-1 across the board, no matter what website you might get, whoever's doing rookie rankings. Marvin Harrison Jr. has proven over the last couple of years to be that upper echelon, elite tier level wide receiver that's going to be coming out of
yeah.
college from Ohio State. No brainer pick, like I said. Of course, the news that we got this week coming into the combine, a lot of us were hoping maybe he would do some drills, test a little bit, but
Yeah.
he's just not going to risk it. He's going to
Why?
let the tape speak for itself. You're seeing that come out a lot right now, and what we've seen from the film versus his efficiency stats and productivity that you've gotten at Ohio State, it's hard to argue against Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1-1 right now.
No, I mean, honestly, I know we all wanted to see him go out there and test and,
Mm-hmm.
make some really cool catches and run a 40 time. But man, we already were gloating about this dude for the last couple months now of knowing he is him. Like he's that guy. So there's no need to honestly try to go out there and risk injury as well or hurt your draft stock. So I respect the move for most of these guys. Honestly, Malik Neighbors is another guy. I mean, we have Rome Odunze. Like these first three picks right here are kind of just solid in the books. Like we have a 1A, 1B going on, or maybe a 1A, but in a different font 1A with Malik
Yeah.
Neighbors and Marvin Harris Jr. And then we have the understanding that Odunze is right there at the 1C, if you would like to say that, man. Like, are these you would say this is your 1, 2, 3, right? Correct?
I would say the first three picks, I
Even
would go as
today.
far as depending on, landing spot for Brock Bowers in the draft. I think that
Yeah.
1 through 4 is probably set as things are standing right now heading into the combine. Of course, as you see the rest of the first round kind of how it's unfolded, I think a lot of those picks are going to start to see a little bit of changing of the guard, so to speak,
Yeah.
as after we get through the scouting combine this week.
Definitely, man. I mean, honestly, I was saying this like watching each of their highlights, man. I don't care who I end up with if I'm at the 101, 102, or 103 spot. It's going to be them regardless. I mean, then we get at the 1-4 spot and the 1-5 spot. These two players right now, if you were to do a rookie mock draft, these are a little high, but maybe not, man, because the hype is real about Bowers and Brian Thompson Jr. as well is getting talked about a lot right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That the time that we did this particular draft right here, Brian Thomas Jr. was a guy that was really, really high on a lot of people's boards because as you went through a lot of the game film, you saw that ability to just take the top off of the defense. A lot of big plays in LSU's offense with Jaden Daniels this week. And that's one
Yeah.
thing that I think a lot of people were looking at him from that standpoint. But now he's started to cool a little bit, and you're seeing guys that have gone in the more the back end of this particular round, like a Troy Franklin. I
Yeah.
think that's going to be a name that's probably going to move up ahead of a Brian Thomas as we get past the combine and closer to the draft.
Man, you made some amazing points about some potential ADP risers, man. Because you talk about Brian Thompson Jr. This is going to be a guy that's going to be a impact player on day one. This dude is going up, snatching balls out of the air, making the huge plays that you need, and these are the flashes you want to see from young talent like him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's a player that's somewhat similar to Justin Jefferson coming out of LSU to a degree. Not a lot of people were talking about him until that final year of eligibility in college, where he had that bump in production. Now you see that with Brian Thomas and how things looked this last year with that bump and that increase with Jaden Daniels and that offense as a whole. And it's been a reason why you've seen him kind of rise up a lot of the draft rankings and widely was considered in that 4 or 5 wide receiver range as we're heading into the combine this week.
Yeah, I mean, look, his ADP could be correct here at the 105, man, after this week. Because if he shows up, I don't know, man, because you have some of these big wide receiver names that aren't performing. He could end up going high like this, come after next week.
Right. He's definitely one of these guys that you're going to see in that second, third, fourth tier at the position that really have a chance to grab that brass ring, so to speak, at the combine with the guys like, Neighbors, like Marvin Harrison, that are not going to be, testing or doing any of the practice or drills at the combine. They've got a chance to go out there and shine and really put the spotlight on their name post combine and have a lot more people talking about him. He definitely could be a winner post combine and have that spot where you pointed out that 1.5, 1.6 range.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, man, I mean, it's pretty much set in stone when we get to the 106 spot. This seems like a little late, but depending on if you're in a super flex league or a one quarterback league, but we all do know that Caleb Williams will be the first quarterback off the board.
Maybe.
Got some pushback. Let's go.
Might have a little pushback on that because, especially from a fantasy perspective, it just depends on where they land.
Yeah.
And that's what we always talk about from a fantasy analyst perspective. Caleb Williams, if he were to land in Chicago with the first pick to the Bears, if they don't move off that pick, but if Jaden Daniels lands with the Commanders in a more high up octane offense, Cliff Kingsbury with that wide open spread offense, that ability to really kind of move and get outside and create plays with his legs as well. Jaden Daniels just has that extra added ability that he can bring to fantasy managers from a production standpoint.
He needs to take care of his body, though.
Has to take care of his body. He is definitely a guy that does not shy away from hits.
Sonic rings every time he's hit.
And just will run into a guy. He does not care. Doesn't know how to slide yet. We'll figure that out when we get to the league. But to me, from a fantasy perspective, it just depends on the makeup of my team. And right now, I have those two neck and neck when it comes to the quarterback rankings right now.
No, I agree. It's more so like Caleb Williams' landing spot does matter 100%, but the talent there you cannot deny whatsoever. This may be the trendy thing to say generational talent, but man, he is right there, if not there, to where he could take over a game, has the arm shift, and Daniels brings a dual threat ability to him, man. But like you said, if he ends up with Cliff, man, that's going to be some dangerous business there, man.
I do. I really, truly believe it. That's something I'm going to really be keen on post-combine once we get into the pro days, see how things lay out. Obviously, you're going to have free agency start before that, so we're going to have a better idea of what the Bears are going to do with that top pick and if it's going to be Caleb Williams going to the Bears or somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Who knows, man? It gets weird. It gets weird, man.
It definitely does.
At the next pick at the 107, it's me, Mr. LaQuan Jones, taking Roman Wilson. I love my wide receivers in this class. It's so deep, man, but you got some talent here. And obviously, around this time, Roman Wilson's name was buzzing, man, because the Senior Bowl just happened. And he was one of the standout stars. This guy was on NFL Network doing interviews with Mike Garafolo. Like, man, this dude is going to be a stud, and he needs to land in the right spot. He needs to land in a team that's going to give this dude an opportunity to work his way, to get more well-polished in areas of where he's lacking at. But what he does really well, man, he is a guy that just finds separation and gets open. These are the guys you want to rely on that has the reliable hands. And I think Roman Wilson, man, he could be an impactful player. So that's why I took him at the 107 spot.
Yeah, like you mentioned, coming off the Senior Bowl, big week of practice, really showed out down there in Mobile, Alabama. And I think as we've gotten away from the Senior Bowl and getting into the combine testing time, we're looking at kind of Roman Wilson's landed in a nice little area for himself in that kind of that third, fourth tier at wide receiver.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, he has that ability. I think you're probably looking at especially a day 2 wide receiver, probably at some point in the second round, has kind of a build and a makeup similar to what like a Tyler Lockett is. You might see slide into that slot formation. Another reliable type of a slot receiver that's going to be able to really create separation, like you mentioned, short area quickness, find open gaps in a zone, and be able to really present himself for a quarterback in nice wide open spaces. And I think that's going to be his calling card once he gets into the NFL. And good spot to take him there in the first round. Like you mentioned, this wide receiver class is so deep.
Yeah, man.
It really make a case for just about anybody here at that point.
Yeah. These are like most of these players are going to be day 2 picks, but they're going to be able to be day 1 impactful players when they get to these rosters and once camp go around. Because to be honest, across the league, there's not that many teams that have a solid number 2 wide receiver. There's not a lot of teams that even has a third on there that you can name. Like I can name the Falcons and Bears, for instance, of guys who do not have the depth at 2 and 3. So you look at these teams and guys like I'm going to talk about next at the 108, Xavier Worthy. This is a guy, to me, he is a bigger Tutu Atwell, just as electric, and he's on punt return. So he is an impactful player. He's good at tracking the ball, which may help him with punt return as well. But this dude is going to be a playmaker. And then moving along from, I know you got to take on Xavier, but you got Jaden Daniels. We spoke about him a little bit, but Troy Franklin, man. Look at this guy, man. At the 110 spot, I really think he's going to be another guy that's going to move up in the ranks after the combine.
Absolutely. I'm a big Troy Franklin believer right now, and it's absolutely going to be a spot to where he gets drafted is going to be the thing. I've had him mocked the last few weeks at the tail end of the first round going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. And I think that's an absolute home run if he lands there with Kansas City Chiefs, is just that added receiver type that they don't have currently, that they can move into the slot, get down the field, find those open gaps. It's just a home run there with a Troy Franklin there. Just the speed aspect too, something that they've really kind of lacked since Tyreek Hill was traded to the Dolphins. I think that's something that they could really do well with. But
they just released MVS as well. Man.
MVS is gone too. Another player off that depth chart that they're going to have to add in. But same thing. Xavier Worthy, like you mentioned, another solid player that's got that speed, can take the top off of defense. The only kind of knock that I've seen in him through game film study and really kind of going back and doing my due diligence with an Xavier Worthy is sometimes he does have those concentration drops from time to time. The hands can kind of be his worst enemy. And I think that's going to be something to focus on early on as he gets into a training camp, things like that. But once you round that into shape, you've got all the makings of a player that can really be impactful. Like you mentioned, day 1 in the NFL, coming in and doing damage like a Tutu Atwell did this last year, or even like a Tank Dell did for the Houston Texans in 2023. That's something you could see with both of these players, whether it be Troy Franklin, whether it be Xavier Worthy, based on where they land in the draft.
Absolutely agree, man. Like these dudes, man, I'm actually happy, that the wide receiver class is so deep, because a lot of my dynasty leagues are dying with age or dying with guys that are just not right now ready for the NFL that we missed on. Like this class, I feel really, really good about, man. There's just so many names and they can be utilized in different areas of the field. Like you got a slot guy that's really, really good. And that's what we're about to skate past to the second round. But after that, you got Jonathan Brooks, the first running back off the board. I mean, a lot of people across the board have him as their RB1, but I can kind of say, I don't know yet, because returning back from that injury, we're not going to see much from him until camp, and maybe a little bit after camp, we're not really going to see 100% Jonathan Brooks. But I'll get back to the running back class in a minute. But Keelan Cole right here at the 112, man. Keon Coleman is one of those guys that I just keep hearing his name, and it's for a good reason.
Yeah, and he's another guy that's really going to need to show up at the combine this week. And if he tests well, you're going to want to see him if he can get down and run into like that mid-low 4.5 range. Ooh. And I think that's going to be something that's going to rise his draft stock up a little bit, because question marks that a lot of people had with Coleman post NCAA season were yes, the productivity was there, but it was also a lot of kind of one-sided, lopsided type of productivity. He didn't really show a lot of extra layers to his game. There was a lot of that down the field type of stuff. His route tree was kind of limited to that at Florida State. So if that's something that he can kind of expound on, and then during the testing process of the combine, really show that he has that lateral agility, he can move a little bit quicker in those short spaces. That's something that's going to help Keon Coleman in that draft stock.
Definitely, man. I agree. He needs to show a lot more in the combine to where it's going to help his draft stock and may also help a lot of his fantasy stock as well. But I just keep hearing this guy name pop up, man. And we're going to go into the second round where this is one of my best. I'm not going to say one of my best, but one of my favorite slot wide receivers in this draft, man. Malachi Corley, man. Give me your thoughts about him.
Oh, man. What can I say about Malachi Corley? I've been on. He's the Yak King. He's been a guy that's been ultra productive for the last couple of years with Western Kentucky. Actually, he was in my preview of the combine piece that I put up at rotoballer.com this week. Anytime I can get a chance to talk about Malachi Corley, you're going to hear me talk about Malachi Corley. We've heard the comps about him with a Deebo Samuel, that player type. You know, he's built like a running back at the wide receiver position. I think a team is going to bring him in specifically for that ability to really create on his own, put the ball into his hands, the short yardage areas. He's a guy that's going to force a lot of missed tackles. He's going to get down the field, get through those secondaries, runs through arm tackles like nobody's business.
Yeah,
he's a wrecking ball on the field. And I think in the right fit and the right offense, you know, he's a guy that's going to be an immediate impact in the NFL. And I think even with the combine this week, he's going to test well. He might not run the fastest, but he's definitely a guy that you're going to look at in terms of what he does from a game standpoint. He does it while he's on the field because he has that instinct and that drive on the field as a competitor.
Why does it sound like Cooper Kupp that you're describing?
It sounds very similar. And then, like I mentioned, too, the landing spot's going to be the thing with him. Like we mentioned with Puka Nacua, that was the thing last year. He landed in the absolute perfect spot in that Sean McVay offense over with the Los Angeles Rams. I think the same thing's going to be with Corley. If he gets into that prime spot with an offensive coordinator that has that creative mindset,
mindset is important.
And unlock his potential, just like Shanahan does with Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
If you land him in the right spot, that's why I took him at 2-1 here. I've got him ranked very highly in my wide receiver rankings with the rookie rankings at RotoBaller right now. So an on brand pick.
On brand. I like it. Now we're going to skate over to Ladd McConkey. He's another guy that needs to show up in the combine. Adonai Mitchell, I think I'm saying that.
Adonai Mitchell, yep.
Yeah, Adonai.
Goes by AD. They just call him AD.
Yeah, Mitchell. We got him locked in there. Drake May, man, he's falling in some drafts, but right here, like I said, this was 2 weeks ago that we did this. This seems like a normal spot where he's been going even leading up to the combine.
Very similar spot. Drake May, I've still got him as my 1-3 currently, but of course, the guy that has been all the talk of fantasy Twitter the last few weeks, pre-draft combine stuff, has been JJ McCarthy. A lot of people have moved him up. It seems like he's kind of been the hot name at the quarterback position over the last 2 to 3 weeks, really since we've done this rookie mock draft. So you're probably going to see JJ McCarthy move ahead of Drake May in a lot of these rankings, a lot of these mock drafts. Drake May's just, he's another one of these guys. I've kind of likened him a little bit to Justin Herbert. He has that similar play style. He likes to get the ball down the field. Not really much He doesn't look for those short to intermediate passes. He really wants to kind of work the ball down the field, go for the home run ball, and that's something that it's going to be maybe a detriment to him because it's
Yeah.
going to be something that's going to be forcing a lot of turnovers early on in his career, similar to like a Will Levis too. I think he's going to be kind of like last year's Will Levis.
Yeah.
A lot of people early on in the process
That's
want to
not a
have him
bad
high.
thing. Yeah.
No,
It's
and
not
if
a
he
bad thing at all.
falls, if he falls down the draft board and falls in the right situation, he'll get him time to work his way into a better roster, better
Yeah.
talent around him. That way he can kind of
I
just work.
I almost agree. Just let him sit behind already established quarterback as well for
Yeah,
a couple years. I mean, taking the Jordan Love route obviously isn't a bad route because we've seen that happen before in the NFL, even before Jordan Love, where these things become something beautiful and these guys become champions, these guys become MVPs and et cetera like that. Not putting that pressure on Jordan Love or Drake May, but I'm saying the process there we've seen most of the time come out as winners.
sure. I think that's the thing that you want to do with a lot of these rookie quarterbacks. Most of the owners in the NFL really want to kind of push these guys that they draft so early out there onto the field. They want to see their investment. But as you mentioned, with the Jordan Love type, sometimes it's best for them to really kind of acclimate to the league, really kind of ground themselves into the offense that they're going to be playing with. And
Yeah.
Drake May is a prime example. I think he's a guy that's going to do his best work after really learning the position at the NFL level.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But we were gonna keep chugging along, man. I want to look at these running backs because I said I was gonna get back to them. Like it gets cluttered. You got Braylon Allen, he goes here at the 205, but we get to the back end here, man. It gets clunked up with
Yeah.
this running back group here. I know we mentioned a little bit about Jonathan Brooks. He's dealing with the ACL tear. He's not going to be at the combine, maybe not until camp. But
Mhm.
give me your thoughts on this order right here. Does this order still match up to where a clunk of the running backs are going in the second round?
I think you're going to see that's where the running backs are going to start to kind of come off board in rookie mocks or rookie drafts in general. Is kind of that mid to late second round.
Mhm.
It's really a takeaway from what we've been used to from a fantasy community for years. Is we got to go get these running backs, get them early, get them on these rosters, and that's not what we've been accustomed to. But I think it speaks to the talent of the wide receiver pool this year
Yeah.
versus the talent at the running back pool this year. Running back class this year coming out is a little bit kind of a lot to be desired from a
Yeah.
standpoint from
All
some
these all
standpoint.
these guys are players that can like I would say they can contribute to a 1-2 punch, but they're
Yeah,
not going to be your day one RB1, 230, touches type ordeal
yeah,
running backs. It's just not realistic here. But some of these guys, that's why I'd say it's so clunked up there. These guys could be producers. These guys
yeah.
can have a role carved out for them. I mean, Bucky Irvin's one of the guys that I really think if you're in a need for a PPR type of running back, he can
Mhm.
catch the ball, man. He can run the routes and he can get on a roster where he can have his head on the swivel and he's catching 2 to 3 balls in his rookie year. And you're like, oh man, who is this kid on the field? So I feel like there's guys like him that you could really just really fall in love with at this back end of the 210 and be like, man, I kind of got a steal here.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a prime example. Like put him on a roster, say somewhat like maybe the Philadelphia Eagles that are going to be missing a back in that backfield. Put him on a roster somewhat similar to, let's say, the Las Vegas Raiders. Josh
Ooh,
Jacobs is
yeah.
expected to be leaving. Someone that's going to need to fill that role of that third down back, that guy, that change of pace type of running back. Bucky Irvin can really fit that mold with his kind of more well-rounded pass catching ability as opposed to some of the other backs in this class. You
Yeah.
mentioned earlier on in the round with Braylon Allen, he's a little bit more one-dimensional. He's more of a, that first, second down runner, that plotter type
Yep.
of a running back. Not a lot of receptions on his record at Wisconsin, and that's going to be something that might be detrimental to him from a fantasy standpoint. A lot of managers are going to probably knock him for that and move him down the board a little bit. So I think when you get into these running backs, you mentioned Brooks. He's mostly the consensus number one.
Hmm.
After that, you're kind of getting in that group, and there's just a lot of interchangeable pieces. You can move these names in and out, different rankings. Just depends. It just depends on what you want out of your running back because they all do different things and they add to an offense from a different perspective.
Yeah, man. I mean, as we go into this third round, man, there's one running back I do want you to just hit on just a little bit because his name keeps popping up is Marshawn Lloyd. He's a guy that's just kind of been buzzing that he's going to outperform most of people's like ADPs for him. Like he's going to be a guy that needs to show up big at the NFL Combine, but there's some hype around this guy that he could really change his draft stock after this week.
Another guy that performed well at the Senior Bowl. He's currently my RB2 in my rookie
Woo!
rankings right now. I am a big Marshawn Lloyd fan. I think he has the ability to round into an all down, 3 down
Yeah,
back in the NFL.
workhorse. He has workhorse kind of written on him.
Does have that ability in his profile. I mean, you go back to kind of see what he did at USC and kind of watch a lot of that game film. He can run in between the tackles. He can break it outside. He does have that long speed to get away from defenders as well that you wouldn't think that a guy like his stature would have. And that's in his profile. And I think that's something that's going to translate well into the NFL. And then as opposed to the back end of the round here, round 3, there's another name there that I think is about to pop off big at the scouting combine this week, and that's Jalen Wright. Jalen Wright, he is another running back I think is going to have big potential post-combine. He's going to test really well, going to test fast. A lot of the agility drills are going to look really good. And once we get post-combine, I think you're going to see his name rise up a lot of these rookie rankings to where he's going to be pushing in that top 5, top 6 range. I think he has a lot of potential in the NFL.
Absolutely agree, man. He's been a guy that's also you see on the fantasy streets, man, just popping up like yo. He's going to be this class RB1, but it's all about situation, man. Honestly, because when it gets to that day 2, and then you see some running backs go off the board, some of these running backs they go in bad locations where they already have an alpha there. That is my biggest fear for him, man. Where I feel as though he needs to get into a backfield where he could really flourish and show his talent and kind of outperform the older veteran guys there that had their chances. All the Chase Edmonds and don't want to put any other running back down, but that's just where my mind is at right now. But he has a very I'd seen a comp, I think like an explosive Raheem Mostert to him, somewhat where he just has pure breakaway speed. Like he needs to get on the team where he could just showcase that and just see night and day from the other running backs. Man.
And that's the thing that you didn't see a lot with Jalen Wright at Tennessee. And I'm living in Tennessee where I'm at. I see a lot of Tennessee Volunteers football, and I mentioned that. And he's another guy that was in my preview of the Combine article on RotoBaller this week as well. Is that he was in that multi backfield with the Volunteers in 2023, especially in 2022 as well. They used a lot of 2-3 running back rotations, so you didn't see him really pull a lot of production in, not a lot of volume. But when you do see he's on the field and gets into a rhythm, the guy really just pops off the charts when that happens. And I think that's you mentioned, and it's a situation with a lot of these running backs. You're coming into the league. Not a lot of these guys are going to be able to really take over a lead role automatically.
Yeah.
Look at a situation like this past year, like a Ty Chandler with the Vikings, performs really well down the stretch. He was drafted in 2022. I really liked him coming out of college, but it took the right situation to really present itself for him to finally show that coaching staff, hey, I've got all the tools that can really be the lead.
I've been here.
Backfield. Yes.
Yeah. That's absolutely what it's about, man. I mean, now we go into this 4th round. There's other guys here. There's a Johnny Wilson, Brandon Rice, man. I mean, they've been saying this dude is basically the wide receiver, Isaiah Pacheco, the way this dude runs routes. I don't know if you've seen that, but he's a hard player, man. And then you look at my team, man. I honestly feel like the wide receivers I got on my squad here, man, Jermaine Burton is going to be one of those guys that I really feel like he needs to show up at the combine. He needs to make some flashes. Not saying his draft stock is going to push him into a day 1 or push him into the fantasy stocks where he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver, but he's going to be a producer in the right situations. Do you have any thoughts on Burton?
Yeah, so Burton's going to he's an interesting case because we come into the combine and I think he's going to be a guy that's going to test well. Mm-hmm. But when you go and look at especially production and you go look at his statistics, you don't really see a lot that comes off the page when you look at that. But if you go look at the game film, There's really a lot of times that he's separating himself on the field. He's creating that space. It's just the nature of what the Alabama Crimson Tide offense was in 2023. It just wasn't that run and shoot, get the ball down the field type of offense that we've been accustomed to, in years past with Tua Tagovailoa in there, with Jalen Hurts in there, that guys that can get that ball down the field and they're throwing a lot. It became more of a ground-oriented run offense with Nick Saban in 2023, and it hurt guys from a production standpoint like Jermaine Burton.
But here's the thing that pops off of film when you see him, man. He's all hands. He is catching the ball with his hands. He's literally snatching it out of the air from the defender. It doesn't matter if the defender's on him. He's still going to find a way to get his hands up there and get the ball. And that's something that you cannot teach. These are the guys that can really show up and show out in camp and make the roster, let alone be on the field as a full-time starter. And I think he could work his way with a team that honestly needs the power. They need the wide receiver depth power. And I think he could work his way. He might not be a year one immediate impact player for fantasy, but he's one of those guys you still want to string along because he's going to be able to work his way on the field, man. But moving on
put him on. I was going to say, put him on an offense. Put him on an offense somewhat like the Tennessee Titans. Might not be exciting right now, but he's going to have an opportunity to grow. Put him on an offense somewhat similar to, let's say, the Cincinnati Bengals. They're going to be losing. Tyler Boyd in free agency. And obviously, they're going to probably see T. Higgins after this year, after the franchise tag is up, that he's going to be moving on. And that's a chance for him to grow in the right offense as well.
And and teams like Cincy, this is the year to get that wide receiver depth. Like, I wouldn't even be mad if they went hard, for wide receivers, even franchise tagging T. Higgins and having a Jamar Chase. You're going to need those weapons in the future for Burrow. If you want Burrow in the same years as leagues with the Mahomes and Lamar Jacksons, you got to keep these weapons intact. And with a draft class like this is the class that you want to attack, man.
Yes, no, totally agree.
Yeah, man. I mean, Javon Baker, another guy down here that, I mentioned before on a RotoBaller, TikTok video I did today. He's another guy that I think he's going to have to perform very well. He's another guy that I really feel as though, like, if he gets on a team in the right situation, he could produce. Pretty much we're done with the fourth round, man. I don't know if you want to go deep dives with these guys that may not even get drafted. I mean, Spencer Rattler might get drafted, but do you see anybody on this fifth row here that you think will make it into camp and make some big noise?
I will say this, Isaiah Davis, the guy I took first pick in the fifth round. I think he's going to be a running back that might be one to monitor, especially after the combine. Another guy that had a really good week at the Senior Bowl, tested well with a lot of the explosive testing metrics that they put out after the Senior Bowl. So those numbers look good there. But after that, you are kind of getting in a lot of those names that are just, pick and move.
Dylan Johnson.
Names. Guys like that with a Dylan Johnson's like, nah. But then even still, like you look in here, really, if you're going to go deep and you're looking at a stash potential type of quarterback, it's going to be Michael Pratt. Pratt, I think he's going to be a guy that could be, if you're going to look for, let's say if we're looking for the next Brock Purdy, Michael Pratt's a guy that could eventually turn into that. He's coming from Tulane. He was a guy that put up really good numbers at Tulane, was a great player at a small school like that. I mean, heck, they even went and won a bowl game against USC a couple years ago.
Nice.
So he's a guy that I think can kind of get into the right system, learn with the right quarterbacks ahead of him, and once he gets that opportunity, I think he could be a guy that eventually down the road might be able to provide some fantasy production for people out there in dynasty leagues.
Yeah, man, I got to do my research on him because I got to be honest, I've heard his name, but I didn't watch his film. I wasn't aware of any of that. So notes taken, man.
Yeah. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, man. But this wraps up the rookie draft, man. I hope we get to have the team come together and we do a post combine because I'm pretty sure all this is going to change drastically after next week, man. So, I mean, go ahead and plug your socials, man, and everything that you got going on right now for you.
I am at Roto Superstar that you see here as well. We do a lot of the work with RotoBaller. I do articles that I put out there. Like I said, I had the preview for the scouting combine that I just put out this week on there. You can also follow us at woo_fantasy. We're going to be kicking up the podcast here pretty soon, kind of letting everything kind of lie low for a little bit before we jump back into things. Usually get going around this time of year, post combine. Then we start discussing a lot of the dynasty stuff that's out there, rookie rankings, like what we're doing with this right here. But yeah, outside of that, man, that's where you can find me, and keep an eye out and go follow me on x.com.
Nice. We're still saying X, man. Nah, yeah. It's Twitter. It's Twitter, bro. But nah, my name's LaQuan Jones, man. You guys can follow me at Real Deal Fantasy on all social media platforms, man. I do some amazing things with an amazing group of people over at RotoBaller. So make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe down low, and leave your comments below on what you guys think about the episode and where these rankings probably will be post combine. And also make sure you check out the new heat on the TikTok channel at rotoballer.com. But man, this has been great, and I can't wait until the combine, man. Before we go, who are you most excited for, though? I didn't ask you that.
Oh, man. There's definitely going to be a lot of guys that I'm going to be watching for when I'm there at the combine. Like I said, I'm going to be there at the end of this week, checking out a lot of the testing drills and seeing what I can find out. There's a guy that I wrote about in the article that's out this week, Malik Washington. He's a name at wide receiver that I'm definitely wanting to see how that testing comes out with him. Xavier Leggett, I want to see if he can kind of keep that momentum that he had coming from the Senior Bowl practices into the combine as well. But then a lot of these other, some of these kind of lesser known running backs, the guys that you've been talking about here with this mock draft, I want to see how well they test. Like a guy that we really hadn't seen yet, the Audric Estime. He's a guy from Notre Dame. We haven't really seen anything from him yet. I want to see how his testing numbers look. I think if he tests well, that's going to be a guy that we're going to be talking about high in rookie rankings as well, too, after this week.
Wow, man. Definitely. You said some names on there that I agree with, man. I definitely want to see where Bucky Irving weighs in that. If he's in the 200s, we are good money. That is one of the guys that I'm excited for. And also Xavier Worthy, man. I want to see him flying around, and I want to see the highlights of him, man, tracking the ball well on the deep ball. But more or less, this has been great, bro, man. I can't wait to connect with you again, because we have another 12-team Dynasty League startup where we're going to be breaking down and giving our thoughts, and going to be talking a little trash about the other teams, man. We didn't do that much on this episode, but we're going to do it on the next one. But I appreciate you guys for checking this out, man. Peace.